All right, welcome to the Young Turks special election coverage. Cenk Uygur, Michael Schur, John Iadarola with you guys. We've got two big elections today, Nebraska's 2nd District and California's 25th District. All other elections are fairly clear, but the reason why the Nebraska election is so important is Kara Eastman. She is one of the strongest progressives left in the whole primary season. She's a Justice Democrat. Last time around, she had a dramatic come-from-behind victory at the very, very end of the primary. Of course, they're never really come from behind, but certainly in the tabulation of the scores, it appeared that way. She won by a very narrow margin against Brad Ashford, who used to be a Democratic congressman from there. She took on Bacon, Representative Bacon, who is a Republican in that district, and barely lost by 2 points in the primary in the general election in the middle of the Nebraska. This time around in the primary, she's taking on Ann Ashford. I'll give you more background on that race in a second. But right now, the most important thing is the polls closed 34 minutes ago, and it has been called Kara Eastman's the winner. So last time it was one of the closest races in the whole country. This time running against Ann Ashford, Brad Ashford's wife. She blew her out of the water, 61-33 roughly. The New York Times and others have already called the race, and Kara is going to move on to the general election against Bacon again. So that's great news, and it's great news on a couple of fronts. Number one, Kara is one of the best candidates we had in this whole election cycle, period. Number two, she beat an establishment candidate that ran against her for no reason. I'll get into that in a second. And showed the strength of progressives in this race. And number three, look, what I've been telling you since March 4th, which is related to the other race we have today, branding and name recognition in politics is everything. It is 100% of the ballgame. And so I told you our candidates that are running a second time have a much, much better chance of winning. And the two people I named, because those are the two that are running again, are Marie Newman and Kara Eastman. Marie Newman has already won. She won her primary easily against the incumbent Dan Lipinski. And now she will win much easier in the general election. That is a very blue district. So Marie Newman will be the 8th Justice Democrat in Congress. Kara Eastman, of course, also a Justice Democrat. Her district obviously is purple and very much in doubt. So, in fact, it'll be a bit of a bellwether. Not that it doesn't matter anymore because it'll be on the same day as everything else. So the bellwether doesn't matter when it's maybe minutes before the actual presidential election is called. So I'll get into the Ann Ashford story in a second. But that's your big news tonight. Kara Eastman winning handily, like we thought she would. And I think she'll have a much better chance in the general election as well, now that she has a lot more name recognition, as proven by her performance in the primary. But Michael, John, great to have you guys with us. Michael, your thoughts on this race?
Yeah, you know what you talked about, the presidential race is interesting, Jane, because this could be a reverse coattail race, right? It's a district and it's in a state that's been traditionally quite red. Ashford won it. Brad Ashford won it. His wife now running and losing against Eastman, and Don Bacon is, a typical establishment Republican from Nebraska. But what could happen here is that Kara Eastman could have enough energy that she helps Joe Biden out. Those reverse coattail races don't happen a lot. Usually it's coming at the top of the ticket, but that's what makes this an interesting race for Joe Biden to look at, in that if he does embrace and if he has a lot of support from progressives, that this might be the kind of place where he is able to climb on Eastman's coattails if in fact she does have the momentum that you talk about. So it's an interesting dynamic at play there in a place that the Democrats would love to do well. I mean, they'd love to do well everywhere, but this is a place they don't typically do well that they'd like to do well.
Yeah, so one more point on that. It's really important potentially for the presidential election. Let's hope it's not. Let's hope it's a blowout and Trump gets killed, but politically. But Nebraska has a unique system. It's not winner take all in electoral college. So the winner of Nebraska gets 2 electoral college points, and then the 3 districts actually apportion the electoral college separately. So if Biden wins the 2nd district, which is the only district they have a chance in, that's Carr's district, then he gets 1 extra electoral college point. People often talk about that. It almost never comes into play. But I'll give you the history of it. Obama won the 2nd district in Nebraska in 2008, but then Romney won it in 2012, and Trump won it in 2016. So,
and Maine is the other state that does it that way as well. It does that sort of proportional.
Do either of you know offhand if it was trending in that direction consistently? Like, did Trump win it by significantly more than Romney did?
Yeah. So, no, I haven't looked at Romney versus Trump in that district. But, no, my sense of the 2nd district in Nebraska, and Michael, jump in, correct me if I'm wrong, or if you have other information, is that it's as swing gets. It swings back and forth. I don't think that it's trending in that direction. Remember, Carra only lost by 2 points at Don Bacon. So that's very close in the last election we had in 2018.
And it should be pointed out that's where Omaha is, which is the biggest metropolis in Nebraska, and that is important as well for the kind of voters that are there. So if any place is going to trend, and if the Democrats can do well in any part of Nebraska, clearly it would be in a big city like Omaha within Nebraska, and so that's why it is trending that way, like most big cities do. They do tend to trend towards Democrats.
And John, to the point you made earlier in the live show the Young Turks that we did, Biden is now winning among the people that don't like either candidate big by 40 points. And Trump had been winning that category against Hillary Clinton by 17. And so you have Omaha, that is the city itself, that's classically more Democratic, of course, but the suburbs had been Republican. And now it appears the suburbs there, along with the rest of the country, that's why I bring up that stat, appear to be trending more in the direction of Democrats.
Yeah. So, we can't rewrite history, obviously, and hopefully now that she's won in the primary, she'll move on. She'll have that second shot at Bacon, and there's a few reasons to think that she might have a better shot, that it might be enough to swing in a few more points. We can probably go into detail on that. But I am curious just what your gut says about the fact that in the last go-around, it ended up being so close, probably closer than the vast majority of people thought that it would. And obviously at that time, and even up until very recently, or today, the party was not particularly supportive. They wanted to go in another direction. Do we think that hypothetically, if they had been more supportive in the general election the last time around, could that have made up 2 points? And do you think that, having seen how she did last time, and now she's going to be the candidate again, should we expect that this time the party will seize this opportunity, put more resources into this race?
So that's a great question, John. First of all, I shouldn't bury the lead. Carr's going to be on the show in about 20 minutes. So now that she's won, she's coming on the Young Turks to talk about it. So stay right here, and we'll talk to Carra Eastman, the winner tonight in Nebraska's 2nd district. In terms of your question, John, that brings me back to the Ann Ashford story first. She ran against Brad Ashford, and there was the normal reason the Democratic leadership opposed her, which is she's a progressive and Brad Ashford wasn't. But there was also a semi-logical reason. No, I'll give them all the way to logical, right? At least something they could easily hang their hat on, which is that Brad Ashford was a congressman from that district before. And so he had lost, but at least he'd been a congressman there. So it's not just that he'd won there before and presumably hence might be able to swing the district back, but also that would mean that he has a built-in donor base, probably connections into the local groups, on and on, right? And that's legitimate and those are real, okay? So, and put in the fact that Carra was a just Democrat, forget it. Good night, Irene. Of course they weren't going to support her. They were going to support Brad Ashford. This time around, though, she almost won. This is now the logic flips, and you should support Carra Eastman. But now the they is vague because, maybe Michael has more info than this on this than I do, but it's in a situation where it is this brazen. The Pelosi's of the world don't normally plant a flag and go, yeah, the one that almost won, I don't like her because she's a progressive, I'm going to be against her. It's not how it works, and I have no idea about anything Pelosi might have said in specific in regards to this race. But the establishment Democratic Party backed Ann Ashford, Brad Ashford's wife, to run against Kara Eastman. And that makes no sense at all. And they did it anyway because they don't like her politics. Ann Ashford ran the campaign saying that hers was a constructive form of the Democratic Party and that Kara Eastman was the destructive part of the Democratic Party, which is ironically a destructive thing to say. And it didn't work for her. She got blown out by 30 points. And so now, in terms of what they'll do going forward, it would be shocking and ridiculously brazen not to support Kara. And I'm not saying that as like a prelude to, and they won't. No, I think they will. I would literally be shocked if they didn't. It would be crazy if they didn't. It's a very winnable district. Michael, they're definitely going to try to win it, and right?
Yeah, I mean, whatever you may think of some of what Pelosi does and the way she looks at progressives and upstarts, the first thing she looks at before she looks at anything else is generally math, and the way she leans and the way the party leans is generally to this what they view as the safe choice. That's not the case anymore. You can understand why Brad Ashford would have been the safe choice last time. Someone who, like you said already, Cenk, had won that district. I mean, of course, he'd be the safer choice in what is a Republican state, but now it would behoove them. And I certainly think that the speaker is going to look at that and say, obviously, we want a pickup here, especially when we may even get a loss on the same night in California 25. We do want to take a pickup where we can get it, and they're going to fight for that. One thing also to remember this time around that's a little different is the prominence of governors, right? So not only are people, you talked about David Sider's article from today where he the haters who like Biden more than they like Trump, and haters were such a big part of it last time because people really didn't like Hillary Clinton. You have that going on now for governors in a way that you didn't before. So I'm going to ask this of Kara later, but I think Pete Ricketts, the governor of Nebraska, his popularity or lack of popularity over COVID, I think, is something that could really play into helping Kara win that race in a different way than 2016 did or 2018 did.
Yeah, and they're going to want to put resources in there so that Biden can pick up that electoral point as well.
Yeah, like we talked about. Yeah, no question. I mean, I think that's 100% true. I think they look at that as, hey, here's a place where we can get an electoral vote. And look, I mean, everybody's doing math now, and they're going to be doing it for the next 5.5 months. So it's important.
Yeah, and Kara's a wonderful progressive, but not necessarily a rabble-rouser, right? So I don't know, though. Who knows what the DCCC thinks and et cetera. They might have viewed the fact that she is, a progressive and didn't play along with the Democratic Party and what they wanted last time around. They might be upset at that, and they might still be holding a grudge. But that, again, it would be surprising. I don't expect it.
It would be surprising, yeah.
Yeah. And usually once somebody wins, it's bygones be bygones. But if they don't support her enthusiastically, then you have your answer. And that's why I say it would be brazen, because it would, if that is their true intent, is to make sure progressives don't win, this would be tipping their hand. You're not doing a very good job of hiding it if you don't help Kara Eastman win the 2nd district.
And can I just say just briefly, it seemed fairly likely that she was going to win again. She won the last time around. She's a good campaigner. She's built on what she's already done and all that. But you never know. It could have turned out different. I mean, she outraised, I think, basically everyone else combined or close to it. But there could have been a huge influx of cash that put, Ann Ashford over the line. Just as a progressive, it is nice to have a win of literally any kind, especially if someone so so decent and just, comes off as such, a good regular person as Cara, to have that win after how the past couple of months have been, not just the pandemic, but especially obviously Bernie Sanders' loss. It's nice to be able to instill at least a little bit of hope in that these wins can still happen, that it can be a demonstration of the principle you've been talking about the need to build a brand and, to run multiple times. Like, we need something to build on and also to pin some hope to. And, I think she's a great example of that.
Yeah, I actually want to say two things about that. Look, guys, I know there was pretty dark times for progressives after Bernie lost. And, for those of you at least that watched the Young Turks, I lost and badly, and so that had to be a little dispiriting. And then Jessica Cisneros, who was so wonderful and promising candidate, she lost. Morgan Harper lost. So it feels pretty dark. On the other hand, look, my race was wild card, and in hindsight turned out to be crazy and unwinnable. So remove that from the picture. Bernie has a devastating, crushing loss that's so important. We get it. On the other hand, when you look at the congressional races, Marie Newman beating an incumbent, pretty damn good. Cara Eastman crushing the establishment candidate against her, pretty damn good. And if Marie and Cara win, look, then you still have Jamal Bowman out there, you still have Alex Morse out there, you still have a couple other Just Democrats, or non-just Democratic, great progressive candidates. Mike Siegel in Texas could easily win. He's a wonderful progressive. And so all of a sudden, if let's say you add 2 or 3 more Just Democrats, last time only 4 new ones won. So that's not so bad. It's not as bad as people think.
Yeah. Yeah, wouldn't it? It would be nice, and I know it's going to take so many cycles of work, and I really do think that we can get there. But wouldn't it be nice to, if somebody asked you, name all the good progressives that have been elected, for you to not be able to do it in a breath, like without having to really stop and think about it? That would be a nice future to achieve.
Yeah.
And Cara's win, by the way, is apples and oranges, in my estimation, to Newman's win in Illinois. It's a very different animal, running Democrats against Democrats, somebody who is out of step in Lipinski with the party, because even the establishment wing of the Democratic Party, Lipinski was out of step with that, and I don't think that there were a lot of tears shed over that. There were the sort of endorsements that were made in a knee-jerk and typical way, but I do think that when you look at these two candidates, they're very different from one another, and their candidacies and the types of races they're in are also very different. So this is, I think, a win for Cara Eastman in Nebraska too would be a bigger thing than Marie winning against Dan Lipinski.
Yeah, and so look, important context here. Last time we Just Democrats added so many candidates near the end, because they were just endorsing as opposed to helping them run, which was they had their core group that they helped run, and then they endorsed a bunch of others. That by the end, they had endorsed, I think, about 71 candidates. I say about because even I lost track. And of those, 4 won, and they were spectacular. But it's...
By the way, I think 71 is about 70. I don't think it can be about 71.
Right, I got you. I think it's 71 is what I'm saying.
Okay.
So this time around, if 2 or 3 win, well, that seems like it's less than 4, because it is. Michael, before you jump in. But
fewer.
This time around, they've only run 12 candidates. So, your winning percentage would be up significantly.
Right.
So... two different ways to look at it. And so we'll see how those races play out. But if Cara wins against Don Bacon, well, that goes further to my theory, which then would be great news for progressives, because that means very likely Jessica Cisneros will win next time against Cuellar. And Cuellar is, just like Michael described Lipinski, out of step with where the Democratic Party is. Just probably a matter of time before he goes. And Jessica's very young and out of the gate got 48 points, which is phenomenal.
Oh, so close.
Yeah, so it's okay. It's okay. I'm telling you, that seat's got her name written on it. Unless something goes very wrong, she should be the next congresswoman from Cuellar's district. So, this is how you make progress. We wish we were getting it in 20s and 40s and replacing all of Congress, but this is a caucus. We got a caucus if they're willing to act like one.
Yeah. Well, and we also know from the example of the past couple of years that it's likely, especially if they continue to support each other, that they have an outsized influence, considering their numbers. That, we could name a couple of names that have only been in office now for just maybe 2 years that have helped to drive the national conversation around some of the biggest potential forthcoming pieces of legislation in a very short period of time. And so the right sort of person can both get elected, but then also can do a lot. These aren't the sort of people that, are waging these insurgent candidacies so that they can sit in the back bench, and see what happens after 8 or 12 years. Maybe a Senate seat opens up or something like that. Like they get in
they
swinging.
Also grow, John. They also grow. Just sorry to interrupt this. This dynamic tough for me, but they, to your point, they also grow not just from their ID and the fact that they are this caucus within the caucus, but also that there are other, they're the Jamie Raskins out there, the Pramila Jayapals and the Ro Khannas, people that, Ro Khanna is different actually from them because he's more in line with these progressives who are newer, but these are the kind of people that could move toward that side because the coalition that they have is bigger within the caucus. So that's important too. And not that some of them aren't there, they're not there all the time. And they play a different game, do Jayapal and Raskin and a few others. So I think it's important to look at these candidates and these members of Congress as having this influence that goes just beyond the fact that they're a small coalition within the Democratic caucus. It's who they can influence and make comfortable coming and supporting them. That helps too.
Yeah, one more piece of dynamic that I want to talk a tiny bit about California 25, and then we'll talk to Cara. So there's differences even within the Just Democrats. Of course, they're not in unison, but also not just in policy, but in strategy, actually more in strategy than in policy. So Pramila Jayapal is a Just Democrat, but she's much more cautious than AOC or Rashida Tlaib. And then there are the people that are great progressives that are not just Democrats, but which certainly caucus in a functioning actual progressive caucus. There's a theoretical progressive caucus that Jayapal and Mark Pocan are the head of, but it's filled with a bunch of posers who are not at all progressive. They're in the New Democrat coalition or the Blue Dogs and progressive caucus at the same time. That means I'm in every caucus, and I don't mean anything. But for the actual progressives and a real caucus, shall we dare call it the Justice Caucus, you would have non-Justice Democrats like Jamie Raskin and Katie Porter, who would be emboldened by them being a real significant force and would, I think, then begin to shift strategy and say, well, now maybe we should push forward because there's a realistic chance that we could affect things and we've got a legitimate argument to make. I don't mean policy-wise. They're wonderful progressives and always think that we have a great argument to make policy-wise, but strategically in affecting bills. So now California 25 is also tonight. Obviously, the polls close later for that because it's California. And obviously, they won't count any votes tonight because it's California. I'm kidding, but not by much. If you don't know, the primary in that race is still not over. I would know that because I'm in that primary. So
are you holding out hope?
I keep refreshing it, and I keep thinking, come on, Jack, come on.
So seriously, for those of you who don't know, there were 13 candidates overall, and four, for all intents and purposes, major candidates. I came in a distant fourth, so you could argue whether I was major or not. But there's only 77% reporting from the primary. They just stopped counting in California. It was amazing. It's one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. No one has ever communicated with us from the state of California, so we have no idea whether they will ever count those votes or if they're just like, whatever, dude, we're just not going to count 23% of the votes, which is stunning because it's already over. Not only is the primary over, the special election is tonight. The general election to fill Katie Hill's seat is tonight, and they have not counted 23% of the votes in that election in the primary. It's amazing.
Hopefully, we'll have the final results from tonight by the time they're running for re-election someday.
Right.
So we talked about this on Old School earlier in the night, but you know, Steve Knight has a legitimate point to be upset. I mean, it was okay. I'll explain later in the night because I want to get Kara on here, and it's complicated. There was 2 elections at the same time. There was 3 different pages on the elections. It was a mess. So, but Christy Smith and Mike Garcia moved on. That's the election tonight. I'll explain who they are if you haven't heard of them, and then we'll give you a preview of who's more likely to win based on a very important number that we have, and that one is surprising. So stay right here. Let's take a break now, and when we come back, Kara Eastman, the winner in Nebraska's 2nd District, will join us.
We're very honest that we're progressives. We call the Young Turks home of progressives, and we support progressive candidates.
There has been this reemergence of political activism, especially among young people.
This weekend was the 2nd Women's March, both across the U.S. and across the world. So these people are not simply marching, they're not simply talking, they're also running for office. And when they do run, they're going to make a difference.
Joe Crowley is congressman from New York. He's very powerful. Why? He raised a lot of money. But there's someone finally challenging him.
We need to have representation that advocates as fiercely for working class people as possible from this seat.
If candidates like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez even get a little bit of media attention outside of what the Young Turks does, they have an excellent chance of winning. She's gonna win. She's gonna win.
68% reporting.
The majority of Americans want Medicare for all. So I don't care what you and your corporate cronies want. What I care about is what the American people want.
We believe in total change. Everything runs on donor money. And that is what we will fight, and that is exactly why they don't like us.
We're having fun. It's election night.
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has defeated Joe Crowley.
Here we go again.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Down goes Crowley. Down goes Crowley. Down goes Manafort. Down goes Cohen. Populist left wing with a gigantic victory in Mexico.
Senator Gillibrand, you have made a pledge to no longer accept corporate PAC money.
Women came out in record numbers in the primaries. They said, you'll be lucky to get 1 candidate. We now have 12 that have won their primaries. Bezos and Amazon announcing that they are going to go to a 15-hour minimum wage.
We're making progress. Let's keep going.
Many of these women made history.
The biggest victories, all women of color. Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, Sharice Davids and Deb Haaland. For a long time, we have not had progressives in power. It's going to be something to behold.
Welcome to Happy Hour, everybody. After a week of soul-crushing news, we break out the good stuff. Good news, good videos, good people, and, of course, drink good alcohol. That's the worst thing I've ever had.
This is the best show.
Full disclosure, we did do a shot right before the show began. It says,
Let's
flamingo.
Flamingo.
The reason you had trouble with that word is it's not a word.
Okay.
This is the one of everything.
I've got a rash. Could I just put it on that to see if it'll take it off?
What did you used to think this was?
Bull piss.
Drink it, swallow it,
No.
spit it. Oh, that's needed after a day like this. Cheers to Brett Ehrlich. Climax. Uranus smells like farts. Because of course it does. This is the worst sketch ever of a perp. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? They found the guy! This is Sophie's super happy dog story of the week.
This dog is so precious and deserves the world. I'm just not drinking that beer.
Here's my dog. This is Onyx.
Yeah, I would just say that he's exotic because he's not your traditional dog. Still 12 out of 10 because they're all good.
Well, if that made you happy, just wait till you see the best thing ever of the week. There is a woman who moves like a horse.
Why do I want to go home and like try this?
We're actually going to show you the running butthole challenge right now. What's happening? No, that's just wrong. Every way. And we'll see you next time.
Hey, Dave. As you can probably see, Skype froze. Frozen crashed.
You know, I'm watching that documentary on the Vietnam War, and there was a TV journalist in the middle of some tiny little village in Vietnam doing live TV as the soldiers were burning the Vietnamese huts, and it didn't crash. And that was
That's a good point.
1965, and he was in Vietnam.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Cenk Uygur, Michael Schur, all of a sudden, Kara Eastman, the winner of the Nebraska 2nd District primary. Kara, great to have you back.
I am so glad to be here, and I hope at some point you play the video from 2018 because that's still my favorite video of all time ever recorded.
Somebody just tweeted it as well because, we got two polar opposite nights in a sense. Last time, Kara, your primary was the closest of the whole election cycle. It was the most amazing come from behind kind of victory, at least in the tabulation, it was come from behind. And I think it was me and John going crazy over it. And tonight, instead of that kind of a nail biter, you crushed. You won with right now, as things stand, about 68% reporting, and it's about 62 to 32, roughly.
Yeah, we're seeing now more reporting. What is it?
It's same percentage.
Same percentage, 98% reporting. So we crushed.
98% reporting. All right. Yeah, and obviously it's been called by all the news organizations, including the Young Turks. And so, congrats, Kara.
It's called a week ago by the Young Turks, but
yeah. Well, in a sense. So let's talk about that, and let's talk about the differences in these races, Kara, because I've been saying on the air for a while now. When you run a second time, you have a much better chance of winning. So this is your second time running. You ran against Brad Ashford in the primary last time, a former Democratic incumbent. This time you ran against his wife, Ann Ashford. So what do you think made such a giant difference between the two races, basically about a 30-point difference? What was the difference maker?
I think it's a bunch of things. I mean, obviously name recognition. We built that last time. I think just my reputation. I was a relative newcomer to politics. I had won an election before, but for a community college board, so it wasn't as widely known. And I think that the other thing that's changed is, I mean, look, even before the coronavirus, a lot of the ideas that we've been talking about, right? That people having health care, people having a livable wage, or a house that's not riddled with lead and mold, that those are, most of us agree, like those are important. And, that finding a way to provide healthcare to everybody that actually saves the federal government money, it's pretty common sense. So I think that a lot of these ideas are seen as fairly commonplace now. And the reality is, look, we worked really hard. We were able to make a full pass of the district at the doors before the coronavirus hit. We reconfigured quickly. We made a lot of phone calls. And with the advent of the coronavirus, the idea of so many people in the district losing their jobs and therefore losing their health care, it has really just brought to light the idea that maybe we need to look at something different. And I want to go to Congress because I want to change those things. I actually want to work on healthcare. I want to end corruption in politics. We have to get money out of politics. These are not negotiable things anymore. These are things that we have to do for the American public.
Yeah. Kara, so I want to ask a question, if I can, just about you talked about COVID. One thing that COVID changed, and I think that it's going to have an effect in a state like Nebraska and others, but especially Nebraska and your district where Omaha is such a population center, and that's the governors. The governors around the country are much more prominent now because of COVID than they were in any other election year en masse. I mean, there are occasions where you can look at one governor here, one governor there, but never before en masse like they are now. Talk to me about what Pete Ricketts means to your race. And I know it may seem disconnected from afar, but it really isn't, is it?
No, I don't think it is. I mean, the reality is when the virus first really started hitting our state, I was praising the governor for some of the things he did, and rightfully so. He did some good stuff. Unfortunately, we haven't seen that continue. It looks like this thing that he created, Test Nebraska, might be a little corrupt. He hasn't, I believe he's maybe opened the state a little too soon. When you go out now, things are open, and it's scary because not everybody's following social distancing practices or wearing masks, and we don't have testing the way that we need it. So unemployment has hit us really hard, and we have so many blighted communities that were in trouble before. I'm in particular concerned about that as we move forward.
Yeah. So, Cara, last time was a tough race because it was so close. This one was tough for a different reason. It was more combative. So tell us about that. What happened in this primary?
Well, it wasn't combative on our end. I mean, I honestly believe that Donald Trump is so dangerous that frankly, Democrats should not be attacking each other. We don't have the luxury of that, especially in Nebraska, right? And so, unfortunately, one of my primary challengers felt that her path to victory could be by attacking me. Luckily, we see that the voters didn't go for it. And now I'm excited to work with her supporters, work with everybody. We're going to get independents to vote. We're going to get Republicans that are tired and frustrated to vote. And we are going to turn out the Democrats like we did tonight.
Yeah. So that's great to hear. I mean, look, she called you destructive, which I thought was hilarious. I mean, it might be the single least appropriate adjective for you that I could possibly think of.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Yeah, there's not much I destroy.
Well, you destroyed her husband's political career. So.
And now hers too.
You just made people around me laugh.
Yeah.
Cara, do you have any idea of the kind of support you're going to get from the Democratic Party itself now that you are, you're looked at as a serious pickup for a party that just wants to build a majority in Congress, yet there are people who are skeptical as to whether or not they're going to come out for someone as progressive. I said to Cenk that I think that the speaker looks at this and sees the math, and we need this seat, we want this seat, and this is a popular candidate now.
That's right. We will have full support of all levels of the party, and we are so excited about that.
And that's been told to you?
I'm sorry?
That's been told to you?
Oh, yes.
Okay, wonderful news. Okay, good.
Great.
So let's look, I know it's a little uncomfortable, but let's talk about the contrast between last time and this time then. Because last time it seemed like the support was a little bit more begrudging. I'll put it that way. Have you seen the level of support from the National Democratic Party increase significantly here already with your victory tonight?
We have. I mean, we've got, to be honest, meetings lined up all week with various levels of the party, different groups that are in and have reached out already. And so we're excited. This is going to be a race that all eyes are on. I mean, there are people saying this district, because we split our electoral college votes, could actually help decide the presidency. And so I think it's going to be a really exciting time, and we know that we will have everyone's support to move forward and the resources that we need to be successful to get rid of Don Bacon, who has been voting 95% of the time with Donald Trump.
Yeah. And so, by the way, Eastman, because tonight's a great night, but we got to win the general election. That's the most important thing. That's how Cara gets into Congress. Is not just beating a Republican, it's beating him with a progressive who is going to fight for your values. Cara, along those lines, you got endorsements this time around from National Organization for Women, Sierra Club, and some major players here that usually are a little bit more reluctant to come to a progressive candidate. Do you suspect that you'll have more and maybe most of the major groups now on the left supporting you, whether they're considered more conservative or more progressive?
Yeah, I think we've been able to kind of bridge that really well, and actually the DCCC has already started talking with us, and we've got a pretty long meeting set up with them this week. They're going to do a poll with us. I mean, so we've got they've done a poll. Sorry. Oh, I'm allowed to talk about the poll. Oh my God! Look, right on TYT. Breaking news, everyone.
Good.
Am I allowed to say that? Sorry, I don't mean to steal your thunder there, Cenk. So the D-Trip did a poll, and I am a point ahead of the current incumbent Republican, a point ahead in Nebraska, and Biden is ahead 10 points here in CD2 or in Nebraska. Anyway, so pretty exciting stuff.
Yeah, it must be District 2. So I was going to get to Biden in a second, but first I just want to make a note to the audience. We don't want to fight the Democratic Party. We only fight them if they fight us. So if they're not fighting and they're helping Kara win the election, that's great. That's exactly what we want. We want the Democratic Party to actually be a Big Tent that includes progressives. Yep. And so Kara's helping to make that happen, and that's wonderful. So, Kara, let's talk about how to beat Don Bacon. So that's great news that you've got a lead already on him. So what's next? What's your strategy for beating him in the general election?
We're going to keep doing what we've been doing, which is reaching out to everyone. We started the campaign by knocking doors of independents. We're going to keep doing that. Look, when we look at the turnout in this election with vote by mail, it's through the roof. We're going to get even more people to turn out with a robust GOTB effort and really reach out to independents, disgruntled Republicans, and those low propensity Democrats that normally get ignored. So we're really excited. We've already started talking about different kinds of strategies because we don't know that we'll be able to knock doors, but we've proven that we can continue to get people out excited and voting, even in a pandemic. And so I think that's really exciting.
And Kara, what's the dynamic with the Biden campaign in terms of, I was saying this before you came on the air with us, that there could be a little bit of reverse coattails here where you can actually help the national candidate because your name recognition in the district and your popularity, and when you look at the numbers with 98% reporting that you're this far ahead, that's important stuff. Is there anything on the horizon for how you will work in tandem with that campaign?
Yeah, so we started talking with the Biden campaign a little bit ago. I mean, we haven't had like the kumbaya moment yet, but I think we will. And you're absolutely right. I think that we'll be able to work together and help each other out.
Yeah, and what form would that take, do you think?
Well, obviously, we've got a great field game going on, and so we would hope that anybody who comes in would want to follow our lead and just work together as much as possible. I mean, look, you guys know who I am, and Joe Biden and I don't agree on every single thing. I don't know anybody that agrees with me on every single thing. If that were true, either as a politician, I'd be lying, or maybe it'd be my husband. He agrees with everything I say. But
even after quarantine, that's pretty impressive.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the most impressive thing I've heard so far.
Yeah, exactly. But we're excited, and I'm being told I have to go to another thing that's local and that we won. And so I'm so grateful to you both, though. Thank you for everything that you do, and thanks for being so supportive of me and my campaign.
Absolutely. EastmanForCongress.com, everybody. Check it out.
Congratulations.
Kara Eastman, good luck, and hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right.
I went to Kentucky Fried Chicken when I first got my license, like 17 years old or 17, 18, whatever it was. And I'm driving, I think, my dad's Oldsmobile. And I parked it in a place where there was two cars next to me, really tight spot, and a car behind me. I don't even know how I got in there because I'm a terrible driver. Back then I was an even worse driver. And on the roads I'm okay, but in parking spots I have terrible spatial reasoning and I'm a mess. And on my way out, I hit all three cars at once. I broke all records, okay? So I went, as I'm backing out, I went boom, oh and this side hit that car, this side hit this car, and the back hit the third car, okay? And I got stuck. I didn't know how to get out. Like, I went, okay, this, and then I'm like, no, and then, right? And then finally I had to stop, go inside the KFC and go, I'm sorry, I hit a bunch of your cars. They're like, what do you mean a bunch of your cars? I'm like, I don't know.
Wow, there's a B?
Yeah. I'm like, I hit 3 cars. I don't know. So you guys gotta come help me, okay? Okay, so one, my bad. Really sorry about that. Yeah. Okay, number 2, can someone take my car out? Because I don't want to keep hitting your cars, and I'm incapable of taking it out of this spot.
Now baby move that fat, baby move that fat. We thugged out.
Hi, I'm Brett Ehrlich with Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. This is Breaking News with Brett Ehrlich. Hi, Brett Ehrlich here. According to EPA head Scott Pruitt, climate change is not happening. He cited a meme on Facebook he saw. When pressed to back up this source, he said it must be accurate because the watermark said it was made by a scientist. So, your move, Truth.
Do all of you know the Young Turks?
An outlet like yourself that are willing to cover this story from the very beginning and that weren't afraid to say, hey, this is something that is legitimate.
And this is why what Cenk and the Young Turks are doing is so important.
Brent Welder is very progressive Democrat. He's a just Democrat, in fact, uncorrupted, not going to take big corporate PAC money. When did you start watching the show and when did you become a member?
So I've been watching for 10 years, an active viewer, but also more importantly, getting out there with causes like Wolfpack.
By the end of our campaign, we had organized about 22,000 individual contributions with an average about $27 a piece. And those initial people were a lot of TYT supporters as well.
In looking at the world in a very different way than corporate media does.
It takes those early people who believe that can really be the seeds of this movement, and that has been the Young Turks.
Thank you, Cenk Uygur of the Young Turks.
Thank you to TYT and all the progressives around the country that have our backs.
You know, the first and only interviews that we had tonight to be with the Young Turks as well, because you guys have been here from the very beginning, and that's what this night is all about.
And I thank Cenk very much for the very good work that he does.
Thank you so much. We're all in this together, and the people are so powerful, and we're gonna get it done.
Thank you for your constant support.
It's a pleasure to be with rebels. I like that.
For all of the help that you've given to the Just Democrats, to Wolfpack, to help fellow progressives, thank you guys, to all the Young Turks members that make it possible.
Hey, this is Edwin. Most of you might recognize me, well, not me, mostly my laugh from the main show.
I mean, it's going to be hard to get the Uygur maneuver on him.
And today, my talent is Rubik's Cubes. You gotta forgive me, it's been at least 5 years since I've competed. So that's why I'm actually going pretty slow. Watch this.
from all the hours
All
of
right,
filming.
back on the Young Turks. Cenk, John, and Michael with you guys. Epic Senior, Epic Junior. We're all here. So tonight's a fascinating night. We had two disparate but important elections. Actually, three, but the third one's not as interesting. We're going to talk about that in a second, though, nonetheless. But Kara Eastman, Just Democrat, very progressive, Nebraska 2nd District, 30-point win tonight. So it's great news for progressives. And we're about to talk about California 25. If I had won the primary instead of lost the primary, there's some chance tonight's show would have been quite different and our focus would have been different. But that is still a really interesting race. We're going to get that in a second. But first, let's dispense with Wisconsin's 7th District. Michael, what was the dynamic there?
Sean Duffy, a Republican there, in a very rural, very, very red district in Wisconsin, retired, and Tom Tiffany was expected to win. Tom Tiffany has won, defeated Tricia Zunker, a school board member, and I believe we have a couple of school board members on the ballots tonight, but this one didn't fare well. It was not a surprise. This is not a bellwether. This is not a pickup. This is just one of those races. I think there were some people who saw what happened in Wisconsin with the Supreme Court elections there recently in their primary and thought, oh, maybe Tricia Zunker could win. Tricia Zunker did not win, but it means absolutely nothing in terms of big picture politics. It means that the Republicans hold on to a seat that they were predicted to hold on to in a very red part of the country. So
57-43 with 93% reporting. Zunker, the Republican, won fairly comfortly.
Tiffany's the Republican. Tiffany is Tom Tiffany.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tom Tiffany. Yes, sorry. Yeah. So one last thing about that, Michael. Sean Duffy was supposed to spend time with the family. Has he got a new profession already?
He does, Cenk, and let's just say it was not just time with the family. To be fair to former Representative Duffy, he has a medical issue for his son, but he's also turned into a lobbyist all of a sudden, which is an amazing thing to leave Congress and become a lobbyist.
Yeah, that is really surprising.
Took the path less traveled.
Yeah, but I've heard it's happened with a couple of other congressmen before that they become lobbyists. Big surprise, but it does happen from time to time. All right, so
wait, Cenk, before we move on to the next race, I just wanted to say one thing about the Kara interview. So when she came on, I couldn't be there, unfortunately. When she came on, she mentioned a video from the past election, and she talked about it, and you had mentioned it. I didn't remember it. So I went to find it, and it was the video, of course, of when she won, and I had forgotten. Like, I had vague memories of covering when I've been anticipating a recount. Like, if you're excited about tonight, you got to go watch that video when Kara won in 2018. It was one of the most exciting times live on the show so far.
Yeah, it was. It was fantastic. And I remember we were actually debating whether to end our coverage before that results came in, because sometimes when results stall, they take 2.5 months. Yeah. Oh no, that's California. But sometimes they really do take a really long time, and there's no point in staying till 3 a.m. to get the last 1%. But in her case, we did stay a little longer, and right at the end of the night, they got to 100% reporting, and she took the lead and won. So, Kara Eastman...
We could get lucky tonight with you. We could be on the air with you when California finishes counting, and when they hit 100, you could win, and it would be unbelievable.
Yes, that's true. It would literally be unbelievable. But maybe Kara Eastman in some way a bellwether for the whole country. Let's hope so. The
jankiest thing ever said.
I know, right? And there's been a lot of janky things said. All right, let's go to California 25. So this is a race that's wild and woolly. It's got a couple of different issues here. Number one, it was Katie Hill's seat, already wild and woolly. And so she stepped down, obviously, because of the scandals. And then that requires a special election But remember, you still have to hold a general election in November. And so it was 2 primaries in one on March 3rd. There was about 13 people in the race. I say about because around the edges, there were different people in the different races. Some folks were in the special election, but not the November election. Some people were in the November election, but not the special election. It was a mess. And there were supposed to be 4 top contenders, Christy Smith and Cenk Uygur on the Democratic side. I'd say not a big deal, but it really turned out to be not a big deal. And then Steve Knight, who was the former incumbent Republican congressman who Katie Hill had defeated, and Mike Garcia, who was running in that seat and had gotten all the Republican endorsements or was set to get a lot of the Republican endorsements and had already gotten some from the groups before Katie Hill resigned. Steve Knight was not supposed to run again because they didn't know Katie Hill was going to resign. Once she did, Steve Knight re-entered the race. But at that point, Garcia had so much momentum that he did wind up getting the endorsements of the Republican Party in Los Angeles and Ventura counties. So that gave him enough momentum to overcome Knight on the Republican side. Now, the asterisk there is kind of because California never stopped, I should say, never finished counting. I was going to say never stopped counting, but no, they definitely stopped counting. They just never finished. And so I think it's fair to say I got blown out by Christy Smith or whoever came in second. It's a jungle primary, so I was not as relevant. But the difference between Mike Garcia and Steve Knight was in the special election, 25-17, roughly speaking, and California stopped counting with 77% reporting. So it is very unlikely that you would close an 8-point lead with 23% still outstanding. So I think Steve Knight probably did the right thing by not contesting it. But if I was Steve Knight, I'd be really, really annoyed. And I'm close to Steve Knight, and that we were in the same race. It's just that there's a 0% chance that you could make up a 30-point lead with 23% reporting.
Not with that attitude.
So right now, obviously, today, May 12th, we have the special election. But Garcia and Smith won the jungle primary for both. So no matter who wins tonight, they will face each other again in November. So that's the second asterisk. But there's probably 4 more. So now, having given you all that setup, who's likely to win? Well, Hillary Clinton won the seat by 7. And then Katie Hill won the seat by 9. So when I was in the race, I would often make the argument that Democrats can't lose this seat. That's probably, not probably now, looking back at it, definitely too strong a comment for me, who would have guessed. It turns out they can lose the seat, but was, I thought, unlikely. A disturbing piece of news is before we find out some of the results in about 20 minutes. Based on the mail-in ballots, the Republicans have a 10-point advantage in the amount of mail-in ballots sent in so far. So that is surprising in this district. But Republicans turn out and vote. That's what they do. And when you have less voting, that's an advantage for Republicans.
One thing, though, Cenk, about this race, though, too, is that Democrats have been closing that gap in the later days. Democratic absentee votes in California always come in later than Republican ones. And at a time when, maybe people were waiting to see if they were going to be able to vote, not sure if by the middle of May they'd be able to. Clearly, they're not able to. I think that if that trend holds, it's still 10 points is a lot to make up, but I imagine it's going to be a lot tighter than what that poll showed and what that information, not even a poll, that information showed.
Do we Sorry, what were you saying?
Sorry, one more thing, John. Just to be clear, there's still about 15% that is not Republican or Democrat that mailed in their ballots. And so that's critical, obviously. And it, especially in that district, it is very hard to tell which side they're going to go to. If you're a registered Republican to this day, you're unlikely to vote for any Democrat, no matter how conservative. And Christy Smith was on the more conservative side of the Democratic Party. And maybe enough people were agitated by Trump in a basically what is arguably a suburb of Los Angeles, that maybe that gives Christie a little bit of an advantage and might pick up some Republican votes. But again, overall, very unlikely. Also, the reverse. This day and age, Democrats switching over to vote for a Republican seems unlikely. It was more likely in the past. So that 15% in the middle, well, since if Garcia has a 10-point lead for sure in the mail-in ballots, and that's not for sure based on what Michael said, then Christie would have to win 2/3 of the independents, and that'd be tough. But those independents will decide the election either way. Yes, John.
So yeah, I have like 1,000 questions, but one thing I'm curious about is, let's say that it does come down to how those 15% swing, that it seems unlikely in this time of, heightened partisanship, blah, 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 that they're not going to cross over, but those independents could go one way or the other. We have been wondering since the beginning of the pandemic, and as it's gotten worse, if this is going to harm Donald Trump because he's bungled it in almost every way that you possibly could, if that's going to tar the Republican brand during this election, or if there will be a rallying around the party that's doing their best, to hold things together. Do you think that we will be able to draw any lessons from how those undecided late breakers or independent voters turn out in this special election, or do you think that special elections are their own beast and we shouldn't draw too much broad of a lesson from it?
Yeah, I have a bunch of thoughts about that, but I can tell you this with certainty: none of the thoughts I have are certain. Especially given my experience in this district, but I think I learned a lot from the race, so I'll give it my best shot. Number one, I think that among the independents that I met, and this was fairly universal, but I don't know which way it leans between Christy Smith and Mike Garcia. The way that I would win them over was two ways. And so this is face-to-face. I'm not talking about the big picture. I clearly didn't win enough of them over, or enough of them didn't even know who I was. But when I actually got in a room with them, or I, went canvassing, if I said I wanted to get money out of politics, they were in. That worked nearly 100% of the time, even more so than it did with Democratic voters. And then number two is if you showed that you had disdain for both parties, that worked. And so you could say it's anecdotal, but I probably met about 1,000 voters personally. And so that's a lot of anecdotal evidence. And so, but that might lean towards Mike Garcia, because Christy Smith is a very Democratic Party loyalist type of candidate, whereas Mike Garcia has the fake image as a bit of a maverick, when in reality, he said Steve Knight was a never Trumper. Steve Knight voted with Trump 99% of the time. So Mike Garcia will do what Trump says without hesitation every single time. And maybe Christy Smith will do that with Nancy Pelosi. But so neither one of those things really appeal to the independents I talked to in that district. So, but I think Garcia has an image as more independent, even though it's totally false.
But John, I think you're also asking whether or not this is the kind of thing that's going to, we're going to be able to learn anything nationally on any other races, if this is going to be sort of a rubber stamp on what how the sort of political zeitgeist is now. I don't think this race is. I think there are too many things at play here, no matter what happens in this race. And the fact that they run again in November, the fact that this is COVID, and not to mention, Christy Smith missed the COVID vote in Sacramento as an assemblywoman. That has been used by Mike Garcia, and it's a great piece of, of ammunition against an opponent to be able to say that. The one issue that everybody's thinking about, and she didn't go to the vote for a variety of reasons, all of them seemingly legitimate for a candidate, but not for a voter. And that's, so I don't think think this is necessarily going to teach us lessons about how the rest of the country is going to go. This was a district that was red for a while. It has a very devoted, as Cenk knows better than all of us, devoted Republican base there that turn out in elections, even though they have voted for Christy Smith for assembly. This is a Republican district, and parts of Simi Valley, where Cenk, I don't even think you went to because you knew that those weren't areas that the Democrats could do well in.
Yeah, I have stories around that, but they're a little bit longer. So in terms of the second part of the question, is it going to have an effect? So there, John, I agree with Michael. Again, we're guessing here, but it's so different than a normal election. It's so much more mail-in ballot, and that leads to organizations making a bigger difference, hardcore voters being more emphasized. I think those are advantages to Republicans. I could be wrong, but that's my sense of it. And so if Garcia wins tonight, I don't know that that's really a harbinger of anything else, even in this district, let alone the rest of the country. Because if you have a real election, presumably more Democrats will show up to the voting booths. But we don't even know yet, because obviously Garcia hasn't won yet, and we're just basing it on one seemingly important piece of data, but one that was changing even up till today.
Yeah. Well, I guess quick follow-up, because I know that you were talking about, what sort of Democrat she is. I know that when you were running against her in the primary, one of the arguments that you were making was that she, theoretically in the general election wasn't going to be aggressive enough, that sort of thing. It's obviously a very different situation than the election would have been had there not been the pandemic. You can't do, on location, like canvassing or anything like that. But I'm curious, like, from what you've seen, like the ads that she's put out, the things that she's stressed, the things that she hasn't, is it similar to what you thought a general election campaign by this candidate would have been? Or did she surprise you in any way?
Yeah. Well, she had one ad that I liked, and I helped put it on social media for what it's worth. I'm not sure that it's worth a lot, but I tried to help. In terms of the kind of candidate she was in the primary and the general election, well, there was two schools of thought on it, and it looks like the buzz in Washington has landed on one of them. So when she ran against me, she didn't seem to put much effort into it. And so one school of thought after the election was she was right. She didn't need to put much effort into it. She still won convincingly. And so I was actually in that school because I was like, oh, maybe she knew something. Apparently, she knew something I didn't know, and she didn't really need to put much effort into it. The other school of thought was she doesn't like to put effort into it, and that was already buzzing in Washington during the primary, and now that buzz has grown louder, and in the general, that could hurt her, and we're going to find out tonight. If that's the case, and maybe that's terribly unfair to Christy, but that certainly is the buzz. There's no question about that. And by the way, there's the irony of her not voting on the coronavirus legislation, because in the primary she was constantly saying, "Oh my God, I'm the assemblywoman from this district, and I can't go and debate any of the other Democrats or even the Republicans, because I'm so busy in Sacramento." So that was her main line of argument during the primary. And boy, when she needed to be busy in Sacramento in the general election. Yeah, it was an unfortunate mistake.
Well, we might see. I mean, it's less than 10 minutes now until polls close, and I'm expecting California is going to just knock this thing out in a couple of minutes. We should have a pretty good idea.
Yeah, right. Okay, so look, one more thing about this race, at least. So, and this one's just it's not personal, but people ask me, so it feels like they want to know what I personally think. I should put it that way. So, I ran in the race, and during the primary, Christy and I didn't exactly get along, to say the least. I'm sorry, Assemblywoman Smith. That's how she liked to be referred to. I didn't put much credence in that, and I pointed out where her donations were coming from. I pointed out a lot of things to not much avail. It didn't help much. I don't want to get back into why media. Anyway, and other things, and it's my fault for running in such a short period of time, definitely. So, so then people ask me, so do you want Christie to win? And the answer is, of course. Am I convinced that she's going to turn into an unbelievably great champion for progressives or Democrats in the House if she gets there? No. Do I think that she will vote with Nancy Pelosi 112% of the time? Yes. Do I want her to vote with Nancy Pelosi that percentage? No. But guys, maybe I'm missing something. But with folks who say, no, don't participate in the process or vote for someone else, or maybe even vote for the Republican, I just don't get it. When you go to vote, whether it was a mail-in ballot in the last couple of days or if you went in person today, you know there's only two people who can win. This is not 6 months before an election. This is right before an election. So why would you want Garcia to win? Garcia is, whatever negative qualities Christy Smith might have, Garcia also has, and then add 1,000 more. I mean, so here's a guy who says voting with Trump 99% of the time is not good enough. So why the hell would anybody vote for a guy who wants to vote with Trump 100% of the time? And I get the last thing is, well, you know what? I can't stand either one of them, so I'm going to stay home. I don't agree with that either. I think that if you got to be in the political process, you got to be in the fight. And so I've said this a million times. Primaries are the most important thing. That's when you get to vote on someone you like and make a big difference and push your party in the right direction. But once you've lost the primary, there's usually there's only two choices. And if you're not making a choice, it's still making a choice. And if it turns out the Republican wins because of your act of omission, it's the same exact thing as an act of commission. It doesn't matter. You're still helping the Republican win if you bow out of the process. So that's my take on it. And I actually don't think that it's that hard a question at all. So, of course, I'd vote for a corporate Democrat over a corporate Republican. Where's the question?
Yeah, you're given a few choices. You choose the best one. That's what you do. And by the way, like that would be, I guess, an unconvincing argument if, we and especially you didn't put more effort on the media side into primaries than probably anyone else. I mean, is there any other network that interviews 10% as many primary challengers as TYT does? And not just once, not just, check in, hi, how's it going? But like going back to the multiple times, starting more than a year out from these primary elections, your argument, you have bought quite a bit of credibility for it by making sure that your show and the Damage Report has taken its cues from the main show and the conversation, that we do that we focus on it early. We try to get people inspired about these candidates. We try to make sure that they generate as much word of mouth and name recognition as possible when they do good things. We try to incentivize it by providing coverage for that. We do that, and I personally hope that it will start to catch on, that more people will pay attention to these primaries when it matters, when something could be done to change the result and give us an inspiring choice to make in more of the general elections.
Kudos to the Damage Report and the main show, but this all started on 2012, which was a branded TYT show many years ago, bringing primary candidates on all the time.
That is true. That is true. Okay. That was actually my first show other than TYTU was 2012 that I was on. Yeah.
Yeah. I was not asked to help that much, and I don't know that I don't know if it was the acrimony in the primary, and I have no idea what it was, or maybe they thought, what difference would it make? Which could be fair, right? But look, it could make apparently a 6.5% difference, and that might be relevant. So especially tonight. So I don't know if it'll change in the November election. And if you're wondering, look, my take on it is, there is progressives don't have to endorse corporate Democrats, and they don't have to offer them money or volunteers or anything like that. But they could make an argument in favor of voting for any Democrat. And so I would hope that progressives would do that, and the establishment folks should ask for that, is my sense of it.
Yeah. I think we might have lost Michael along the way.
Yeah, I think so. All right, so it's okay. We're at the top of that. Oh, we're about to go to members only. I forgot about that. Yes. All right. So TYT.com/join. All right. If you're watching on YouTube, there's a join button underneath. So you could just click on that. There's 3 different layers. There's, and I forgot. Oh my God, there's so many things I forgot to do. I forgot to go to the member videos, which we'll do in the post game a little bit. I forgot to tell you about TYT.com/go, which I was supposed to be telling you about for hours. I forgot to check in on the thermometer. I forgot everything. I got carried away by Kara's win and got excited. Anyway, if you can help at TYT.com/go, that would be amazing. The 3 layers of YouTube membership or Young Turks membership on YouTube is $1.99, just supports the show, and you get a badge, and then we know your comments are from supporters, and we pay more attention to that. $4.99 gets you the post game like we're about to do right now for half an hour, and $9.99 gets you all of our videos. I don't know if our archives go all the way back to 2012, but if they do, they'll even get you Michael's show where he interviewed primary candidates in 2012. So, and of course, the other way to join is TYT.com/join. And then you do that through our website. And those are the member comments where you read during the live show on a regular basis. So the polls are about to close in California. So if there's any news, and presumably there will be some news, we will bring that to you in the post game. And then if there's any updates on anything else, obviously we'll cover it. And I also, like I said, wanted to give some shout outs to some of the members. In fact, I think I have 1 or 2 minutes left. Let me at least do one part of the thing that I was supposed to do all along, which is to read for you guys some of the folks who gave money. So James P. from Fort Morgan, Colorado, $5. Craig R. from Lawrenceville, Georgia, $27. Maria S. In Boyd's, Maryland, $127. You're getting the press-on T-shirt. That's amazing. Thank you. John G. in Jackson Heights, New York, $5. Manuel G. in Playa del Rey here in California, $10. Thank you, guys. We deeply appreciate it. And it turns out the thermometer, we were trying to get to 110,000 by the end of today. If this is correct, I don't think we're close. It seems to be 106,255, but we can keep that going. And like I said, we'll have some more of your videos in the post game as well. TYT.com/join. Michael, John, thank you guys, but we're not done yet. All 3 of us will be back for the post game.
Many of you already know that the TYT Army has been officially organizing for the past year, and the Army is constantly growing, too strong. They're making decisions on which candidates and elected officials to help, and always coming up with ways to inform people about progressive policies. Now, we want to give a huge shout out to some special volunteers and highlight accomplishments of our TYT Army. I love this story. One of our volunteers was watching the local news and saw 2 other volunteers that they don't know on TV. Now, how do they know who they were? Because they were supporting their TYT Army gear in support of protecting the environment. Check that out. Now, what I also love about this story is that the person who saw this took a screenshot and then posted it in the TYT Army chat room. You can imagine how excited they were to see this, and I couldn't be more proud of what they're doing to build the TYT Army. You too can get your TYT Army gear at TYT.com/shop, so we'll know when you're on the news. To learn more about the TYT Army and how you can help from home or even start your own team, head to TYT.com/army. Check your spam folder for lost emails to stay up to date with our events.
Okay, I get it. You're progressive. You're looking for other progressive voices. Why? Because you want real progress to happen. You're tired of the why, regular stuff. You should be checking out the Young Turks. Why? Because who else is going to have Killer Mike talking about politics and social issues in his new TV show, Trigger Warning?
Like all small businesses, we're struggling through this pandemic right now. We are doing a drive to keep TYT healthy. We want to be able to keep doing it, and it's been a Herculean task.
Ready for transport.
We're trying to raise $2 million overall, $200,000 a month if we can. If you can, and only if you can, TYT.com/go. Seriously, because we can't sustain this show without you. So thank you for making all this possible.
Where else can I feel as free as I do here to do what I do? And I wouldn't be able to do what I do if it weren't for all the people who have really carried us throughout the years.
You're our ultimate boss. We report to you guys, and if you don't like what we're doing on air or we're not telling the truth, boom, you fire us.
We're not the Young Turks, you're the Young Turks.
Keep TYT alive, healthy, wonderful, awesome, independent, progressive. Keep it all those things. In fact, we have a new theme, Press On. Get it? It's a double meaning. TYT.com/go.
With Doe, you can turn your passions into potential investment opportunities. Whether it's cannabis, fashion, travel, video games, or anything in between, you tell them what you're interested in, and they'll help you uncover the investment potential. Doe provides your daily one-stop investment shop with lists of companies that relate to your personal interests, relevant news, and your favorite stocks and videos that unpack today's money-moving headlines in under 3 minutes. Go to doe.com/TYT.
Today, a terrible day for the internet, a terrible day for America. The internet as we know it is not going to exist anymore.
A real dark day for information, and yet another way that they're bleeding out the democracy.
We're now going to have these gatekeepers of information deciding what we can and can't see, and that's what scares me the most.
Whether you're conservative or progressive or anywhere in the middle, this is the one thing we should all agree to. Protect the internet, because the establishment is coming for it. Don't let them destroy the internet. Many of you already know that the TYT army has been. Many of you already know that the TYT.
All right, back on the Young Turks postgame. Cenk, John, and Michael with you guys. The polls are officially closed in California's 25th district. You're going to be shocked to find out that there are no results.
What?
Nothing reporting. But give it a couple of months, and then they'll get right back to you. And by that time, we'll have the November election. Give that a couple of months or years, and then by that time, we'll have the 2022 election, etc. So, obviously, I'm intensely curious to see what's going to happen and who's going to win. But I have to say, I didn't follow the election that closely after the primary. So I don't know all of the granular details of what Garcia or Smith might have done right or wrong, other than the big stories that we already discussed. Michael, you might know better than me. I mean, other than her not voting in the coronavirus bill, and at the end there was this absurd thing where the NRCC and Trump insinuated that Democrats were trying to steal the election by adding a voting area where more
ballot
people
box,
could vote.
in Lancaster, which the town has a Republican mayor who signed off on this, so it really doesn't seem terribly partisan. But they're already setting it up as if somehow Smith does win this race tonight or in the coming months, the Trump people have said already that it's because they cheated, and by putting a ballot box, by making it easier for people to drop off ballots in Lancaster, all of a sudden voting is cheating. A couple little things, Christy Smith served on the Newhall School Board, and there were many teacher layoffs, and that was something that hurt Christy Smith. And the other thing is that she referred to Mike Garcia, who has a military past, as a pilot, which seemed demeaning, but I think was overplayed. This is a race that did not have a lot of meat in it since the primary, and so I don't think you missed very much by not paying close attention. Turns out not very many people did, Cenk.
So, Michael, I mean,
there are results, by the way.
Oh, there are now. Oh, yeah, John, hit us.
Yeah, so the initial 35,625 votes are in. There's 9% reporting. I'm assuming that a massive chunk of that is mail-in ballots. But right now, Mike Garcia is leading at 57.7% to Christy Smith's 42.3%.
Not a good
and
stuff.
that is, I mean, they're all mail-in, right, or drop-off. So, but yeah, that's the first tranche that comes in. You don't know where they come from, and that was expected. It was expected as Lee would be significant, on the first tranche of ballots that came in. But
it looks like so far all of them, none are from LA County. They're all from Ventura.
That's huge. That's huge. Ventura County is Simi Valley. Simi Valley is, it doesn't mean much because, when my results came in, it was mainly from Ventura County, the first batch. And it was, believe it or not, even worse than the final results. And I thought, it's okay. It's Simi Valley. We're going to do better in Lancaster and Palmdale. It turns out we did 50% better. That wasn't nearly enough. But for Christy, that might make a big difference. But here's another dynamic that I do know in the race, which is that, generally speaking, the Antelope Valley, there's two very different parts of the district. One is the southern part that is more of a suburb. Santa Clarita is the biggest part there, but there's also Simi Valley. There's a tiny bit of Porter Ranch in there. And so anyway, for those of you not familiar with LA, it's mainly suburban. And then when you cross over the mountains, there's the Antelope Valley, which is the Mojave Desert, and it's a totally different dynamic. And there, it used to be very Republican because the defense industry is there, and they're still there. They're a very big presence. But now it's heavily Latino and a decent number of African Americans as well. So much more Democratic. That's why it's still an oddity that our Rex Paris is still the mayor of Lancaster, a Republican. And I was kidding around with Ben, but also true, that for half the race, I couldn't figure out why everybody was so possessive over Rex Paris. I get it, dude. He's your Rex Paris. Let it go. No, R is his first initial, right, as it turns out.
I had no idea what you were talking about.
Also, I think that there will be a bigger number of voters coming from the Ventura County part of this. So those are bigger numbers. They voted in bigger numbers, correct, Cenk?
Yeah, and so I wish Antelope Valley had stronger voter turnout. That would be better for progressives, better for Democrats. But the part I was going to get to is that Christy didn't have a lot of love in the Antelope Valley. She's from Santa Clarita, and Antelope Valley should be the Democratic stronghold, but she didn't have a great presence there.
So we have another. We have another big jump in votes to 60% reporting now. LA, about 60% of each county is in. It does appear to have helped her, but only a little bit. She made up a few points. Mike Garcia is now leading 55.7% to 44.3% for Christy Smith. It looks like he's not doing quite as well in LA, but he's still leading by 13,000 votes right now in LA County.
Yeah,
also,
that's it.
Garcia has a last name and a connection to the Hispanic and Latino parts of the community, always important too. So that shouldn't be discounted.
Yeah, he's a fraud, but
no, I'm not saying that, but it does matter, and we've seen it matter with every denomination in history. It mattered to Jay Kim, who was a staunch Republican, who was the first Korean American to serve in Congress. Won a ton of Democratic Koreans in California. Just people like that.
But that's part of the reason why they picked Garcia, because they know how Latino the district has become. So they're like, let's trick people by putting in a Latino who will vote against Latinos 100% of the time. And maybe that's part of what worked here. Guys, I'm ready to call it. I mean, 60% reporting, 55-45. That race is over.
I'm not ready to call it.
Okay.
I could go either way. So I guess it's turning out pretty much how we might have expected, looking back a couple of months ago. I really did hold out hope that hypothetically, the fact that we've lost 80,000 people in a couple of months would have turned people a little bit off to the Republican Party, or at least make them want to go a little bit in a different direction. But perhaps
when
not.
Mostly Republicans are voting. I mean, that's what you have to really see the breakdown, John, before you see if this is kind of sends a blueprint out to how to run a race. I think all this does really is whoever wins tonight, it just gives them a little bit of a leg up in November. I don't think it makes any huge difference, personally.
But hypothetically, if in a number of special elections stretching back over the last couple of years, surprise Democratic turnout has helped to swing some of them and make some of them very close, even if they didn't swing to the Democrats.
True.
I would want the Democrats to be fired up this year to get rid of the Republicans, get rid of Trump, and I don't know. It doesn't look like that here.
I think they look at November for that. I mean, this is an atypical special. This isn't like the Ohio and Pennsylvania special elections, like Georgia 7, like ones that we've watched really closely. This is totally different. This is happening when people can't vote. This is happening when people are focused on a presidential race. It's happening when in California, so many Democrats are going to come out to vote for the Democrat against Donald Trump next time. It's going to make a difference that just a strange day in May, it can't have that effect today.
Yeah.
All right, stay on the 3-shot. Just a moment of levity. I like how our heads now appear to be in order of magnitude.
Yeah, why is mine so huge? I mean,
Epic Senior with the big head, Epic Junior with a
I'm sitting exactly where I've been sitting.
I can zoom out if you'd like. I can get down to Jake's size.
And me with, for the first time in my life, a tiny, tiny head.
Yeah, I don't like this. Pull it back, Johnny. Pull it back. This is ridiculous.
It looks like we came in first, second, and third.
Right.
We build you as epic. We need to sell the epicness.
Right. That's right. Or we're like a Russian doll.
I like the little ring light effect you got going there. Oh, Russian doll. They need to bring out a second season of that. Although I realize you're talking about the actual thing. By the way, it's up to 76% now, and it looks like 55-45 or thereabouts is where it could end up. Yeah.
It's over. So, by the way, Zeffrey, who is the director of a potential movie about that race and about the election cycle, texted me right before we got on air and said, you got to make a prediction. And I said, Garcia. And he said, yeah. Give me the numbers. And I said 55-45. So it's less impressive because we knew the people who had mailed in the ballots, where they were coming from.
But in addition to you needing to make a prediction, I do think you also need to make an apology. You have been besmirching the electoral system of California all night, and they had the results in 15 minutes.
That's very true.
That's true. I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to say that I need to apologize because I thought maybe Christie might not be a dynamic candidate, and as it turned, okay. So, God, let's have a tiny bit of fun here. I know I'm supposed to get to the videos, and I will, theoretically, etc. But what do we think? And I'm particularly curious about Michael's opinion. If we can ever shrink his head to a reasonable.
What is going on with me?
Okay, so
let's play the ridiculous hypothetical of what if I had won the primary, which I've now said like 78 times was not close. That's why it's a ridiculous hypothetical. But I'll go first. I think the result might have been 55-45. And I'll say why in a second. But first, Michael, what do you think?
Well, I mean, objectively, I would say you would have trounced him and you would have won. You've been in the next congressman. But I don't think a race and a race that got a lot of attention. People are not paying attention. John, you got to pull my shot back. This is ridiculous. My head is just too big. I don't know why it's happening either. It's a new thing to
I
this
think
show.
It's an aspect ratio thing, I think.
Okay, well, I'm not sure. Okay, yeah. That's not a good enough
By the way,
answer.
I got a mug as large as Michael's.
Right. It's great. You should see. You can't see them, but I've got Jefferson and Roosevelt, and I've got it's like it's ridiculous. Not Roosevelt.
I get it.
Theodore Roosevelt. But I don't think you would have done much better than Christie tonight. But I do think you would have a chance to have done much better in the fall with a longer race and a race where everyone was paying attention and a lot of Democrats were coming out. I just don't think tonight is indicative of anything.
Yeah, the reason I said it might have been 55-45 if it was me is because the few voters that came out appear to be very party line. And so if 55% of the voters were going to be Republican, then the Republican candidate's going to win. You got to swing the independent voters. You can't really swing the Republican voters. I mean, I would have had a prayer if it was longer, as Michael's saying, but it would have been a wild, weird, totally different race if anybody was paying attention, because the only way that I ever swung Republican voters, and I did swing a couple I didn't meet that many because you Nancy Pelosi hates me. And they'd be like, oh, okay, now I'm listening. And then I could win them over with no money in politics. I hate the corruption. And, Garcia or Knight, they'll take orders from the Republican Party. And every one of those was like, for the folks who would listen, they were like, oh, yeah, no, that's true. And a couple of them did promise to vote for me. Apparently, literally a couple.
We don't know. They haven't finished counting.
That's true. Yeah.
It worked briefly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but look, from my point of view, there's no ha-ha in a couple of ways. One, it's not cool. Two, I don't mean it. I wanted Christie Smith to win. I wanted Garcia to lose. And three, like I just said, I don't think, at least in the special election, it would have made much of a difference if 55% of the voters were Republicans. So it is what it is. And so, for God's sake, the main point there, guys, is go out and vote. You got to vote. Now, in this case, not go out, but mail in your votes. You got to vote, because that's how Republicans win all these elections. We outnumber them everywhere, almost everywhere, and they just not vote us.
Yeah, and if you're not voting for someone, vote against someone. Feels just as good. It does make a difference. What you said about Mike Garcia is true, Cenk. I mean, yeah, is Christie Smith your favorite candidate in the history of candidates? No, you ran against her, but the point is that everything that you don't like about her is Mike Garcia just on steroids, and that's enough.
Yeah. And look, there are differences between Democratic candidates. It's not that we just ran against each other. There was like Anibal Valdez Ortega. He's a up and coming guy. He's a young, smart guy, and he's fairly to very progressive. So if he was the major candidate and he had won, I'd be like, oh, great. I mean, we agree 94% of the time. I love that Ani won, right? So there were real differences between me and Christie, but it doesn't matter. The differences between me and Garcia are much greater, much, much greater. So, anyways, let's do have fun in a different ways now. We promised you those videos. Let's do it. Here's Ashley Causey. She sent in a video about our TYT.com/go campaign. Let's watch.
Hello, my name is Ashley Causey, and I'm from Helena, Alabama. Yes, there is a TYT army in Alabama, as shocking as that is. I discovered TYT years and years ago, but I really got involved in the 2016 election, watching the news every single day with you guys, and watching all the special election coverage and everything. And you guys really introduced me to Bernie Sanders, which kind of propelled me to, become more progressive, and it really shaped my ideals and my politics, which also, you guys and Bernie also helped me switch from just a social work major in college to also being a political science major.
Well, like her, I can't hear Asher either.
I can hear you guys.
Yeah, I see that she's doing one. I think that assumes we're number one in coronavirus across the world. All right, we're on the air at least? Okay, good.
Okay.
Okay. You guys probably heard what Ashley said, but we couldn't. It looked like she was holding up two Bernie Sanders babies. Like the way their shirt was.
Bernie babies.
Bernie babies?
Remember Bernie babies?
Oh, yeah.
Collect them all.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay, so since we can't hear the videos and hence comment on them, let me instead go to pictures. Okay, I think we can do that. So I love every one of these stories, but I'm a hokey, corny guy. So let's go to Deborah. Okay, so Deborah Gwynn sent in a picture. Hopefully we can put it up for you guys. She gave to the official name of the campaign is Press On, which is actually relatively clever. That's because I didn't come up with it. So Deborah writes in, desperate for real news without the spin and bought and paid for information that is mainstream. Back during the 2016 election, I found you guys. I've been watching religiously ever since. I love all you guys. It takes a village and a fresh perspective, and a change-up is good. Cenk and Anna are tops, but Nando and Franny have incredible depth. And, of course, Johnny Pie. Who doesn't love him? That's a rhetorical question, right?
Right,
okay.
yes.
I can list several.
It's rhetorical, and I'm going to move on. But Mark Thompson for the win. That voice is, whew. And so I can't tell if you guys can see her picture, but she's wearing a Mark Thompson like TYT hat. Okay.
And I can't see her picture.
Yeah.
And I can't hear her either.
Yeah.
I don't know where I am. What year is it?
Yeah. Mark's such a great guy.
Overrated.
Anyway. I was going to make a joke as opposed to John, but it doesn't really make sense. John's too nice a guy. So
right.
It's an irrational joke.
Yeah,
All
by
right.
the way, can I just say really fast, one of the hardest things about switching over to our quarantine home-based shooting is there are some people that it's been very easy to have Skype into our shows and everything like that. But there are some people like Mark Thompson that because of the schedule he shoots at, I have not been able to do a show with him for like 2 months now, which is really unfortunate. He's such a nice guy. There's this like web of people that you don't realize you're sort of relying on. And so another reason why it's going to be nice when we finally get back to normal.
He still won't be able to come in at that hour, though, John.
Not at that hour, but like the main show and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other day, I had an hour-long call with Ben, and I'm not sure I've been on the phone with a friend for that long in like a decade. So it's not something I'm doing often, but I've gotten, because we're stuck at home, I've gotten through a substantial amount of the mountain of work that I have that I was like, I will now take an hour to talk to a friend. That's what I'm going to do.
I have to tell you, I feel like every phone call with you, Cenk, that we have, is a really long phone call. Like I don't ever feel like you're like rushed. I don't know. I know you are. I know you have 1,000 things, but
that's true, but there's a couple of reasons why. One, I call you at night, so that's definitely better. In the middle of the day, it's impossible.
Yeah.
Two, I called you a lot while I was running, and I'd call you on the way back from Palmdale.
Right.
So I have a long time to talk.
That's true.
Right. And then sometimes I call you when I'm high, so that then
right.
we're just having
We talked
fun.
like a week ago. I feel like we talked forever a week ago. I don't even remember.
Okay, let me read one more. And then I want to say one more thing about the 25th district. Anton Cole, I'm perhaps older than your average viewer, but I'm no less dedicated to progressive values. Born in 1966, older than Google, I became politically aware during the Reagan era. Question authority has always been one of my guiding philosophies. One day, I think it was 2016, difficult not to give up hope for America and humanity in general. I'm so tired of losing. Seems like no matter what we do, nothing ever changes for the better. We may gain one small victory here and there, but then we're overwhelmed by losses over and over again. One step forward, 5 steps back. At least TYT is a beacon of light in an ever-darkening landscape. Never stop doing what you do. You always have my support. Well, Anton, we really, really appreciate that. We appreciate everyone who gave any money, but also who wrote these wonderful messages and sent these videos. On the videos next time, try to have audio, guys. That's just pro tip.
Also, like if you're, I mean, don't you think 1966 is a little bit old to be watching this, Jay?
Were you born in 1966?
Oh, don't say anything about that, please. Now, this is what makes me a bigger loser than Anton, though, is that he came of age like politically in the Reagan years, and I remember Nixon and Ford and Carter. I don't know, what fun he was having while I wasn't, apparently, but well done, well done.
Yeah, I super fast. I wonder how much that affects you going forward. Like what the first few years of you like actively watching politics, how that influenced you. Like if you started, during that time, and Reagan was such a huge thing, how different that might be.
No, that's true. I mean, Reagan was the first. Carter. I remember Carter pretty clearly, but Watergate was my first real memory, and of course, I didn't know everything about it, but I knew enough about it. And, you hate corruption, right? I mean, you just hate it because of Watergate and these horrible people. And then you compare, like, I can't, my parents hated Nixon so much. If my dad were alive, he would be yearning for Nixon right now compared to Trump. So it does, you everything is through a perspective of when you're living it too. But this is, this is different than that, certainly.
Yeah, Michael, you've gone all the way from Watergate to Obamagate.
That's true. Yeah, this morning changed everything for me. Yeah, you're right.
That was my favorite. Obamagate. Okay, Mr. President, what is it? Well, you know.
Right.
No, actually, we don't know. We have no idea what you're talking about.
And oh, by the way, Biden's running. But. Yeah, it's like why go after? I mean, I know he was his vice president. And everything. I don't try and make any sense of any of it. But.
You can't make any sense of it.
No. So I stopped.
Yeah. So my son asked me today, who was president when you were born, and I never thought of that. Yeah, and I was like, oh, Nixon. That's unfortunate.
Oh,
I got LBJ.
Yeah, LBJ's better. Okay, so I know we got to go. Last thing about District 25, for tonight at least. It'll come back in November. Weird feeling. Now that we had the special election and Christie lost, and I don't know that this speaks well of me. I don't know what it says about me. But now I'm rooting for Christie a lot more. So we, like I said, it's a weird feeling to have. But I wanted her to win. I didn't want Garcia to win. But now I think I'm actively rooting for her in November. So I don't know. I don't know if I can help or if she'll take my help. But she should ask probably.
She should. I mean, listen, if she loses, if she loses, as it appears she will so far, then she should do things differently than what she did just now, because they didn't work. And absolutely, she should solicit your help and go after votes that she didn't get, because she needs to kind of earn this. And if there are knocks against her about her not working hard, if they're at all accurate, I don't know. It doesn't matter. Now she's got to work hard. So. And also, I mean, I don't want to speak for you. I don't know if this is something maybe lurking in the back of your mind, but she lost now. So to some extent, you probably feel a little bit of like kinship, like you both went through a loss just a couple of months apart. But also, this is a time of us feeling like we're losing a lot other than Cara Eastman. And we really just hope that November brings some good news, just about the first good news in years. And it seems unlikely that she would drastically turn around the results of this election in November and we don't win, nationally and in a bunch of other races. So it seems like if she were able to turn it around, it would be indicative of a lot of other good news potentially coming on that night. Yeah, in California specifically, a lot of Democrats are going to vote in that district that didn't vote tonight. There's no question. And that's going to help her. But she's got to do more than just that. Yeah, man, the more I think about it, the more Katie Hill won by 9 and Christie lost by 10 today. That's 19 points, man. Well, and Jen, people there don't like Katie Hill now. They feel let down by her. She doesn't poll well. She came in and she did that PAC thing. I mean, but she's not a popular person in the district. She won by 9, and that didn't help Christie either. Yeah, that's true. Absolutely. All right, guys. Look, thank you for watching tonight in a wild, weird night in a lot of different ways, including Michael's head. But at the end of the day, it's I'm a little worried about the 25th district, and I'm a little worried about the Democratic Party and our voters not showing up enough. But Cara's win was great tonight. Yeah. Fantastic. Big win, big number. That margin matters in Nebraska. That's huge. Yeah, absolutely. All right, guys. So score another primary win for Just Democrats. So overall, at the end of the night, pretty good night. Michael Schur, John Idarola, thank you guys. Love it. Looking forward to doing it again. Bye, guys. Have a good one.